Ruby Frankie, the so-called YouTube mom-fluencer who pleaded guilty in December to abusing two of her kids, is now headed to prison.
A judge in Utah sentenced Frankie and her former business partner Jodi Hildebrandt to 4 consecutive sentences of 1 to 15 years. And prosecutors say Frankie tortured her 12-year-old by forcing him to perform outdoor labor in the summer heat until his skin blistered from sunburn. Frankie denied the children food and water and regularly placed one in restraints, abuse that she posted on her popular YouTube parenting channel. A prosecutor blamed the abuse on religious extremism. During the hearing, Frankie opted to make a statement to the judge owning up to her actions.
I can see now over the past 4 years, I was in a deep undercurrent that led us to danger. My willingness to sacrifice all three was masterfully manipulated into something very ugly. Thank you to you and your staff for facilitating my opportunity to take accountability and to answer for my charges.
The Utah Board of Pardons and Parole will determine prison time. Frankie and Hildebrandt have 30 days to appeal the decision. Reporter at the Deseret News, Hannah Syriac, joins us now. Thank you so much for joining us. There was obviously a lot of emotion in this courtroom yesterday. This moment that first tipped authorities that something really bad was going on was basically a 911 call that came last fall with a concerned neighbor alerting police when Ruby's son showed up at his door. Let's take a listen to that first.
I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here at my front door asking for help. He's emaciated, he's got tape around his legs, he's hungry, and he's thirsty.
You don't have to be a parent to just be disgusted by this. You just have to be a human, basically, to know that this is really, really awful. How did the investigation play out after that call when we're talking about the timeline? Because that is pretty fast, just last fall.
That call took place on August 10th, and then by the end of the month, both Jodi Hildebrandt and Ruby Frankie were arrested. We know from the search warrants that the police went to Jodi Hildebrandt's home, and there they were able to locate rope, cayenne pepper, honey, and the child identified Jodi as the one who put rope around their ankles and used cayenne pepper and honey to, quote, dress the wounds. And so over that 20-day period, the police investigated and then made an arrest on August 30th.
Alex and I are both parents, so these kind of stories hit very differently, and it's just devastating. Can you elaborate a little bit on the role that what we described as religious extremism played in all of this, and also the disconnect to that you're a mom influencer on social media, but then doing this behind the scenes? Discuss those two kind of bewildering dynamics of this case.
Well, so from what we know from what Frankie said, Frankie essentially said she had hired Hildebrandt as a mentor figure, so to speak. Utah's actually now passing a bill to make these restrictions around life coaches a little bit more stringent than they currently are. And Ruby Frankie said essentially that she had a skewed view of what was right and wrong. And that through this skewed view, she decided to abuse her children. Ultimately, she said in her statement that she expressed remorse for this worldview that she developed. And I think we really learned from Judge John Walton. What Judge John Walton said was adults are supposed to protect children. Adults with specialized training in particular are supposed to protect children. You didn't do that. And he later said, this was to Jodi Hildebrandt, and your philosophy in dealing with them frankly seems detached from reality or any objective standard of decency or even common sense. And then for the second question, when you see these influencers on social media, a lot of people think their lives are perfect or that they're the ones to aspire to. But in this case, I think it was a real wake-up call for people to realize that not everything is as it seems.
I think that's the scary part about social media these days, is that anyone and everyone can make it seem like they are the expert on any given topic. And if they have a following, if they get the clicks, the likes, the shares, all of that, then that only fuels that fire. So when I heard about this story, Not only was it devastating, but then I start thinking about the other adults around these kids, relatives, anybody who could have said anything or done anything. Was that a part of this case at all? And if so, could anyone else be held liable for what happened to these kids?
KSL and Deseret News obtained records that showed that over the course of a year leading up to Ruby Frankie's address, that there had been calls placed to the Department of Child Services. So there was some indication that people knew things were amiss. In terms of liability, I can't really speak to that. There hasn't been any other charges filed as far as we know. So it seems so far that Frankie and Hildebrandt, they both pled guilty. They both said, we're pleading guilty because we're taking responsibility.
All right, reporter for the Deseret News, Hannah Syriac, thank you so much for joining us this morning with some more insight on that. We appreciate it.